My name is Sheream James Reed. I'm a first-year dental student at the illustrious Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee. It was pretty stressful. So finishing up the spring semester of 2020 at Meharry Medical College Masters of Health Sciences program, it was extremely stressful. We started the semester with in-person classes before the pandemic ensued. Then we were required to shelter in place and complete the semester at home. For many, these drastic changes created a lot of stress for many of the students and I, and we experienced unforeseen, technical difficulties with exams, with quizzes and lectures, and that hindered our full academic potential. Personally, I perform a lot better with in-person lecture and when I have access to resources like the library. So my grades dropped a little bit as a result, but thankfully I still managed to adapt and graduated with honors because I performed really well the previous semester. And in addition to that, in March, the city of Nashville was struck by an EF3 tornado that affected many of the students at Meharry. I was studying for a pharmacology exam when sirens rang out, and I had to scurry to the basement of the school. I'm a resident of Philadelphia, and we don't ever I've never experienced any type of tornado warnings, so this was pretty traumatizing to me. Soon, I found out that an area 1 mile from the school in my daily route home took a direct hit. So the pharmacology exam was the factor that prevented me from traveling home around that exact time that the tornado struck. So many of my fellow classmates took a direct hit, and many of the students went without electricity for a few weeks while they continued their lectures, exams, and quizzes. Despite these misfortunes, all of my classmates were physically unharmed, and most of us matriculated to our respective doctoral programs. Back when the pandemic hit, I believe around February, we were still taking courses, but soon as the semester ended, April, the Meharry Medical College, they pretty much spearhead 3 different COVID assessment sites in the city, and they needed, student volunteers to help them with the assessments. It could be, pre-screening. It could be traffic control, just directing different vehicles safely in and out of the assessment site, or even getting experience with swabbing, doing the nasopharyngeal or the nasal swabbing with the COVID testing. So for me, during the summertime, I had really not much else to do. I was working a part-time job doing Instacart at the time, but I wanted to help the school. And Meharry Medical College, their mission statement is service. It is worship of God through service to mankind. And I pretty much wanted to help, the school. So I went out and volunteered 3 days per week, about 12 hours per day. And as a newly commissioned U.S. Army officer, second lieutenant, HPSP scholarship recipient, I felt like it was me stepping up into my duty to help, the Nashville community. My family, I don't think that they were necessarily concerned about me starting school. The virus, even though it can affect all age ranges, mostly affects the immunocompromised and elderly. And for me, I don't have any type of, that I know of, I don't have any type of ailments. And So for me, they weren't necessarily concerned about that. My mom, she even volunteered to stay at Albert Einstein Medical Center in Philadelphia so that she could, help with during the COVID crisis. A lot of the employees didn't feel comfortable and they wanted to stay home, and she volunteered to stay around. So for us, I think we were pretty confident that nothing was going to prevent me from going into this school year, dental school. I've been through a lot and I've waited a long time for this. So it was only God could stop me from taking these classes this semester. Yeah, so my decision to enroll or defer never crossed my mind at all. I invested an incredible amount of time toward dental school admission, and I've endured several DAT retakes, 3 ADIA ADSAS applications. You guys achieved a bachelor's degree and 2 master's degrees. So I worked diligently, improved my application in every aspect, and patiently waited for my opportunity to present itself so that I could claim it regardless of what life threw at me. Yes, my experience, because I've completed the Meharry Masters of Health Sciences program, I was already present in Nashville for the most part. I did go home to visit, and for the most part, I was settled in. And my concern was pretty much the other students who weren't already a part of the Meharry community, and how they were going to connect with other students. Because right now we have exams and quizzes. We're facilitating online tutoring sessions through Zoom. But when you have a group of people like study groups that come together in person, it has a different type of feeling. Relationships, I feel like they are forged a lot stronger in person than they are online. So for me, I have some anxieties dealing with the exam software like Zoom and ExamSoft and Blackboard Collaborate. We have different proctoring softwares, and sometimes they malfunction. And when you're about to take an important exam and your grade depends on it, and potentially the future, if you wanted to go into a specialty, is very, stressful. But I think the school did a good job of addressing different, aspects of that. And, for the most part, a lot of the students are doing, fairly well. There's some bumps in the road, but I'm just hoping that the school takes that in consideration and will, do something at the end of the semester to adjust for the stresses that we're going through now. Correct. So we've been online since June. That's when our program started. We have like a mini session during the summer. And next week, we actually start our first physical class. So we've been online for every class, but we start dental anatomy lab next week. And today we were COVID tested so that we could get our results and start physically in dental anatomy lab next week.
Got it.
And those are things that we have to do in person. We'll have to do like moldings and, things of that nature. Next year, we'll have to do preps for cavity preps and such. So we have to be in person. Unlike in medicine, the medical school, they are entirely online. I think they start rotations the spring semester of their second year, the sophomore year. So they pretty much don't have to be on campus. However, with the dental students, we get hands-on experience from the gate. So we have to be in person at some point. So for the dental students, the School of Dentistry, the only class for the D1s we have is dental lab, and that's in person. Everything else is online. As far as the rest of the school, if you don't have to be there in person, they're going to have it online just as a precautionary measure. But the school has implemented a reopening procedure that will rely on pre-testing, concurrent testing, and self-reporting. So students will be tested at a frequency yet to be revealed to the students. But if a student tests positive and potentially exposed others, then contract tracing will be used to track down and test those other students while maintaining a quarantine until definitive results are available. The students who are positive will be required to quarantine for at least 14 days without symptoms and retest negative before returning to lab. Meharry, they blocked off some of December to account for missed lab work for those affected by COVID-19. So the school is doing a good job of trying to adhere to the CDC guidelines, so to keep us safe and, you know, the patients safe who come through the school. So orientation and fall semester have been entirely remote thus far. It was disheartening not being able to connect with classmates physically. You know, online does not forge the same kind of relationships. We said that before.
Yeah.
But however, we worked around it and played best the cards we were dealt. The school incorporated self-introductions for each student and icebreaker games to get to know each other online. Additionally, we have a class of 2024 group meet, which allows all of the class to connect with one another in real time. And soon, actually today, we were tested for COVID and beginning dental anatomy lab next week. And that'll be our only in-person class for the semester. So that will give us an opportunity to meet each other in person. Yes, first I would like to give credit to my mother. She's awesome. Dental assistant. She pretty much influenced me to going to dentistry, since I was a kid. And essentially, I volunteered I shadowed in high school at her clinic at Albert Einstein Medical Center in Philadelphia. I shadowed her supervisor, Dr. Gabati, and that further influenced me to go into dentistry. And once I attended the University of Pittsburgh for college, essentially I was doing well within my first 3 years of school, and I experienced a school shooting. Grandfather passed away in the same semester. I went into pretty much a depression, and I had to step away from school for a few years. And financial, difficulties kind of tied into that. So I didn't make it back until 5 years later. Finally made it back in 2014, graduated in 2015, and was starting the dental school application process, and didn't realize how much work you have to put into it. You have to, prepare really well for the DAT, which I did not the first time around. It costs a lot of money. You have to either save up a lot of money, come from a affluent background, and which I did not. So I couldn't apply to too many schools. But as a first generation college student, navigating the dental school application process and the college application process was akin to pretty much sailing the sea without a compass, essentially. And when I made it back and I graduated, then I was told that my application wasn't strong enough and that I need to increase my GPA and DAT score. So from 2015 to now, essentially now, 2020, I spent all that time to essentially improve my application. So finally, I took a trip down to DC to see my girlfriend, who at the time was working at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I just said, hey, I'm here in DC. Let me go to visit randomly Howard University Dental School of Dentistry. And I met the faculty, and they said, oh, I know a former classmate who has a practice in Philadelphia, and he practices oral surgery. And she gave me the address, one of the faculty. I looked up the surgeon, and it was literally 5 blocks from where I grew up when I was a kid and where my grandmother still lives. So Dr. Franklin Scott, he's an oral surgeon. He graduated from Howard University, and he is the first African-American to graduate from Temple Oral Surgery. That's where he did his oral surgery certificate. And I shadowed him for about 2 years, and he was a big influence, like a father figure to me. You don't see too many African-American professionals of that degree, so for me, I never had that father figure, because to take it back, my father, he passed away when I was young, when I was about 3 years old. And so that was, he was pretty pivotal in, giving me guidance for the future. And he also served as a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy. And he told me everything about the military, how they can pay for school, you can serve your country, all that combined into one. And I started the process of, seeking out recruiters and getting more information. This is back in, 2017. I started to gather all this information, and when it was time to apply, I got the scholarship. It was a long process. I have to explain it in another session, but serving my country, having school paid for, having training that you will never get in the civilian sector anywhere is what I'm really excited about in the United States Army Health Profession Scholarship Program. And in addition to that, they pay 100% of my schooling. They provide me with a $2,300 a month stipend while I'm in school. And the residency, the specialties, the percentage of acceptance is a lot higher than they are in the civilian world. For instance, oral surgery is about a 2% acceptance rate. Tens of thousands of dentists apply to oral surgery programs every year. And there are only a couple hundred spots in the entire country. And the military, specifically the Army, ranges between 30 to 50% acceptance rate each year. You might get about 20 applicants and about 10 are accepted. So when I was shadowing with Dr. Scott, he pretty much was an influence, and which is why I wanted to go into oral surgery. People would come in with, wisdom teeth that they needed to be extracted. Some people would come in with, I'm trying to think what else. Just even regular, dental procedures that they need done. And for oral surgery, I researched and started to see why, I wanted to go into it. You could break people's jaws to help them. It's like one of the few fields where, you can do things like that. If somebody gets into a car accident, their face is entirely, mauled. You help put those pieces together. I think that the gruesome aspect of it, I find pretty exciting and amazing. And which is one of the reasons why I want to go into it. And again, for me going into the military, it's a combination of patriotism, it's a good financial, situation. And I'm increasing my chances of going into the specialty that I want to go into. So I think all those things, they help me, they shape me into the direction that I wanted to go into. And dentistry pretty much revolves around my desire to pursue Army oral and maxillofacial surgery. So I want to pursue the 4-year non-degree, non-MD Army oral and maxillofacial surgery program, and then continue in the Army for another 18 years. So I want to make it all the way up to at least colonel, possibly brigadier general, but I don't know. Me being a non-traditional student, I'm not sure if I have enough time for that. But I also want to work as a part-time surgeon in the Army, as a reservist once I'm done full-time with the Army, and while working full-time as a civilian oral surgeon. So maybe from ages like 62 to 65, and I would like to work part-time as a civilian surgeon at some point and create a scholarship fund that will help STEM students from lower income families. I would say do your research, learn how to be an efficient studier, figure out a combination of methods that works for you. Maybe do a combination of flashcards, Anki, and a notes review. Maybe study individually and then do a study group once you grasp the general concept of a topic. So don't stick to one plan unless it works for you. Just mix it up a little bit. The next piece of advice I would say is, again, do your research. Learn how to finance your dental school application process and alleviate dental school debt once you are here. The whole process is very expensive. Taking the DAT, applying for one school, traveling costs for interviews may cost a student a minimum of $1,500, and that's just my quote. Multiply that with each school that you apply to. So save up, search for scholarships, seek help from family members, be prepared. Very expensive. Third piece of advice would be to, build resiliency. If you have never failed in your life or endured a life event, you will at some point, and it may likely be in dental school. So life is not fair, and at some point you will be tested. So don't panic. Seek out help early. Learn from your mistakes and don't dwell too long on your failures, because you can always redeem yourself. And my last piece of advice would be to have fun before dental school begins to prevent mental burnout. For many, this will be the most challenging stretch of life you may ever endure. So you will need to remain disciplined and commit most of your time towards the practice of dentistry. You will be able to do fun things, but at a lower frequency. So take advantage of the free time responsibly before the hard work begins.